call this meeting to order. And first we'll have a moment of reflection. Thank you. We're going to move on here. You can make disclosure of pecuniary interest now or at any point in time through the meeting should one arise. And next we need confirmation of the agenda. And before I ask for a motion in closed session, we have one item to add, and that is a matter pertaining to solicitor advice / potential litigation. So if I could have a mover and a seconder on the agenda as amended. Councillor McKenzie, Deputy Warden Nagans. Those in favor? That's carried. Perfect. We're going to move on to consent agenda. And we have items 5.1 to 5.21 and the March 17th, 22 council minutes. Does anyone want to see anything pulled for discussion? I see a hand at the bottom, but it's really dark. Councillor McDermott.
Yeah, I was just wondering if Perth South would like us to support 5.7, if they'd like to add our support to their letter.
Certainly. I'm sure they wouldn't turn it down.
I make that motion. I make that motion and that we support the letter. Okay,
so we'll do that as soon as we approve the consent agenda, and then I'll come back to you and we'll get that motion. So 5.7 you wants to remove. Anyone else have anything? Not seeing any hands. So I have a motion that council receives consent agenda item 5.1 to 5.21 with the exception of 5.7 and approves the March 17th, 2022 council minutes. Moved by Councillor Kellum, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That's carried. And I'm going to go back to Councillor McDermott with regards to 5.7.
I would move that we support the letter from Perth South and send our support along. I would think just to the Minister of Finance. I don't think we'd have to send that any further than the Minister of Finance.
How about perhaps a MAFR as well? Yeah. And
that's good.
And MPP Pettipies, how's that?
Yep. Nope, that's good. Yep, that's good.
Okay, so we have a mover. Do I have a second? That'd be Councillor Wilhelm. Any further discussion? Don't see any hands. Those in favor? That's carried. Okay, we're going to move on again here. The next on the agenda is public meetings, hearings, and delegations. And up first is Dasha Paragaduva. I hope I didn't butcher that last name really badly.
I heard.
And if we see you up there. Dasha.
Good morning, everyone. I was just rejoining as you were saying that you hope you didn't butcher my last name, and I'll refrain from comment on that point.
Well, I thought it was close. Paragadova.
Paragadova, but very, very well done. That's better than most. So.
Oh, hey, thank you.
Good morning.
We're ready for your presentation here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and good morning again. The purpose of our relatively brief presentation is to speak to the Code of Conduct complaint report with complaint 2020-102 that was filed on November 29th against Councillor Herlick. The complaint, you will have seen the report as part of the agenda, and I hope that you've had a chance to review it, but in summary fashion, the complaint alleged that the councillor contravened section 5.6 of the Code of Conduct, specifically with remarks made during a closed session meeting of council on November 4th, 2021. The complaint centered around comments made around a discussion of the implementation of a possible mandatory vaccination policy for non-unionized employees of the county. And specifically, the complaint stated that when the counselor indicated that any support of such a mandate would face punishment in an afterlife and made comments in accordance with biblical prophecy akin to a reckoning or judgment day, that in so doing he breached section 5.6 of the code. For your reference, section 5.6 of the code of conduct requires members to act, that they will be open and honest, focus on issues rather than personalities, and avoid aggressive, offensive, and abusive conduct. And while our investigation showed that for the most part, the comments were not perceived to be threatening, they were perceived to be to create an offensive or hostile environment for those that may not share Councillor Herlich's faith. We have provided a report to council ahead of this meeting along with the agenda. I don't propose to read or reread the report to you in detail. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you may have on the facts in the report. One thing I specifically wanted to bring to your attention and make clear that the purpose of our investigation with this complaint, like any other complaint, is not to make assessments or place value on the counselor's beliefs, religious beliefs or otherwise, nor his opinions on vaccination policies. The sole purpose of our investigation was to determine whether the counselor breached the code of conduct by virtue of the comments made at that meeting specifically. And the primary purpose of our presentation today and why we present to council is, having read the report and our proposed recommendations, to consider and vote on the recommendations specifically. So the intent is not to, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions on the factual findings to the extent they exist, but the purpose of the presentation today is to, for you to look at our proposed recommendations, which are just that, recommendations, and council can discuss them and choose whether they would like to adopt them. They're not obligated to adopt them, but you have them there for your reference. The only two other things before I turn it over to you for any questions that I'd like to say is that Councillor Herlich, as the respondent in a complaint, again, like with any complaint pursuant to your code of conduct, has had a chance to respond to our findings. He was provided with a draft of our factual findings directly. He indicated that he wished to save his response for council. We did advise him that when he addressed this to council, he would only be able to speak to the recommendation specifically. We did not receive a further response from him. And he does, in fact, have a chance to address council with respect to the recommendations today. You will have seen that we are recommending based on the totality of the findings, and also taking into account that this is a second breach of the code to have been found committed by Councillor Herlich this term. We recommended a suspension of remuneration for a period of 10 days, which is within the permitted penalties that we as Integrity Commissioner are able to recommend. And I think that about sums up what I wanted to bring to your attention, but I'm certainly happy, like I said, to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Dasha. So first and foremost, I'm going to ask council if they have any questions for Dasha on this report. Just a second, Councillor Herlich. I'll get to you right shortly. Not see any hands. Okay, Councillor Herlich, you can, apparently, according to what I just heard, speak to the recommendations, but only to the recommendations. Okay.
No, great, thanks. Yeah, I get, yeah, it's very complex, and yeah, I gave a lengthy response here, and Dasha summed it up here. And yeah, so yeah, I see the response there at the end. I just want to say, it's quite interesting, you know. It's safe to say all of council here either has been called to order or called point of order. And I get, you know, maybe that wasn't the way the complaintee wanted to take the route here, but, you know, business really did continue well through that meeting. I remember that component of it. And, you know, I have no problem a phone call or through the warden, give me a call and, hey, Councillor Herlich, like I'm an open, like I'm a fair fella. I mean, staff reaches out to me regular. I talk with many counselors regularly.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you there for a second. You're kind of deviating from the recommendations.
Well, I'm still right in. I'm talking to the response respectfully, Warden. I'm there, and I'm not going into the findings, but the recommendation here, what I'm going to go to is the 2 weeks here. There's recommendation that this isn't frivolous. I believe it is frivolous. Give me a call. Call me to order. I have no problem with that. And there's lots in the report here, and Dash covered it, and it's a lot. There's around vaccination and the single-sided and the coercing. It's a lot. It's in-depth studies. So I just think, honestly,
I'm gonna have to stop you again because I gotta follow the rules here. You can only speak to the recommendation, not
Yep.
findings.
yeah, and I'm on the findings, and I believe that it is frivolous, and a phone call or a point of order would have been interesting. And no, it's interesting.
Okay, comments from councilors? Not seeing any hands. Well, first, what I'm going to do is ask for a motion to receive the Integrity Commissioner Report Code of Conduct Complaint 2021-02. So if I could have a mover and a seconder, we'll receive it. Councillor Wilhelm. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Warden Agates. Last chance for comment. Those in favor? That's carried. Okay. Next, we're going to move on to the recommendations here. What are council? There's a hand go up. Did you say there's a hand up?
No.
Okay.
No, let's go ahead, Jim. Go ahead first.
Okay, so we have a recommendation given to us by the Integrity Commissioner. And that recommendation is council imposes suspension of Councillor Delroy Hurlick's remuneration for a period of 10 days for being found to be in breach of the code of conduct. And we can deal with that one first. There is 2 recommendations, but I'll deal with that one first. Does anyone want to speak to that? Councillor McDermott.
Yeah, I would like to make an amendment to that motion and strike the $300 and replace it with $1.
Oh, we actually don't have a motion yet. I'm just looking for comments.
Okay. Yep, okay.
Any other comments? I don't see any hands going up. So I'm going to reread this motion, and if you don't like it, then you can come up with a new one. And that is that Perth County Council imposes suspension of Councillor Darrell Hurlick's remuneration for a period of 10 days, being found to be in breach of code of conduct, section 5.6. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wilhelm, you're moving that?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kazenberg. Okay, so now we do have a motion on the floor. Moved and seconded. This is your last chance for comment or discussion on that motion. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of that motion? That's carried. I had to do some counting there. Actually, I'm going to ask those opposed. I'll get you to raise your hand. Yeah, we're carried.
Respectfully, I was wanting to make a comment there, Warden, but it kind of went pretty quick and got called to the vote. So interesting.
I didn't actually see your hand up, Councillor Hurley. Okay, well, there is another.
Went pretty quick.
So there's another motion here. Okay, that's the second motion we don't need. Now, I'll let you make your comment there now, Councillor Hurley.
Yeah, no, interesting for sure. I still stay steadfast. A point of order would have been appreciated, and that's my thoughts. We're all grown adults here representing the community. there's a lot of pressure by these vax policies, and it's interesting. Communities of color have been dragged into extreme and atrocious injections before in history. And here we are, you know, call me to order. And I stay steadfast that this is frivolous.
Okay, well, we've got your point. You've got your point across. So I believe that is, Councillor Deputy Warden Higgins.
I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm having trouble seeing who voted which way. And if I count the votes, I thought it was a tie. And maybe
No, there was 4 against. 1, 2,
Yeah, but
3.
if you go the weighted vote, I thought there was 5 of us
That's what I
against.
was counting. I was doing, okay, I'm gonna redo this then. That's maybe not.
Sorry, I could be wrong,
But I'm gonna
but
say those who were in favor of that motion, raise your hand. And I gotta start counting numbers. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. People keep moving around on the screen here. I'm trying to count numbers. Okay, those against. 2, 4.
against.
Against, yeah, those against. I only, that's 2, 4, 6, that is 8. So we got one that hasn't voted on us. So that is a tie. I thought we had an extra hand up the first trip through.
Is Daryl allowed to vote?
He's a counselor. I have
Daryl
to
and
ask
Jim would
Dash
be-
that question. Dash, are
Daryl
you
and Jim would be the 2
allowed
that
to
didn't
vote?
vote.
Councillor Hurlick typically would not vote on the recommendations.
Okay, that's what I was kind of thinking, but I wasn't sure. We don't deal with this that often.
That's,
So that is a tie vote, so that is a defeated motion. This time you guys gotta stop moving on the screen on me because everybody's flipping from side to side. Okay. We have the potential for a second motion here I'm gonna read then. And that Perth County Council formally reprimand Councilor Hurley, who has been found to be in breach of Code of Conduct, Section 5.6. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that one? Councillor Duncan moves. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kellum. Any discussion on that? Deputy Warden Higgins.
We have clarification what it means by reprimand.
Dash, do you want to entertain that question?
absolutely. So the Municipal Act, pardon me, the Municipal Act authorizes the Integrity Commissioner to recommend to council effectively 2 types of penalties. If a member is found to be in contravention of the code, the first is a reprimand, and the second is a suspension of remuneration paid to the member for a period of up to 90 days. And that's typically per contravention. That is the extent of what the Municipal Act dictates in terms of the kinds of penalties that can be imposed. It does not set criteria for those penalties. However, there has been, this has been a long-standing interpretation exercise, including by courts and other authorities, and which have recognized that basically the fundamental function of determining the appropriate penalties are any deterrence, any rehabilitation ability, and maintaining public confidence. So when we make our recommendations, we take into account prior contraventions of the code. We also take into account the intent of moving forward. So a reprimand is effectively council stating that they don't condone the actions and the contravention of the code. It's formally adopted, obviously, as part of the minutes of the meeting, and it forms part of the public record. But that is the extent of it. There's no further action to be taken either than that. It's it effectively is reflected as part of the minutes of this meeting that council formally and publicly condoned this specific contravention of the code. I hope that answers your question, Deputy Warden.
Thank you very much, Dasha. Does that answer your question, Deputy Warden Higgins?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Last chance for comments on that motion. Counselor Kazenberg.
I'll just merely observe, Mr. Warden, that we have something of a history of trying to rely on expertise. And in this particular case, the Integrity Commissioner has made an expert recommendation, which we have rebuffed. I just find it interesting to see that in this case, we have spurned a recommendation, and obviously we have another choice to make, but I express some concern about that.
Okay, duly noted. Other comments? Don't be moving around on the screen on me here. Those in favor of that motion? I see 2, 4, 6. Those against? 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay, well, that motion is defeated. That puts us back to square one. What is council's wishes? Councillor McDermott.
Receive for information.
Actually, we've already received the report. So that part's already been done. So I guess at this point, I'll have to ask Dasha. At this point in time, we've had 2 defeated motions. Do we just continue on with our regular business?
It is council's prerogative to adopt or not adopt the recommendations. You've considered our recommendations, and I believe there's been a substituted motion put on for alternative course of action. I would say that it would be unusual for in a situation where there is a finding of a breach, especially a second breach of the code, for there to be absolutely no recommendations adopted by council. However, that is certainly council's prerogative. Otherwise, it would be up to council to propose an alternative course of action.
Okay, last chance for comments on this issue. Councillor Kellum.
Yes, sir, you were. I'm confused. We had 2 motions on the floor. Some were in support of the reprimand with financial impact, and then some were not, and then have flipped. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I have no problem with dealing with this and reprimanding. I just don't want to see any financial impact on this individual. So I'm lost somewhere here. Is it just me, or I think we're dealing with it, but we've had a flip flop of some reason. So that's
why I'm bringing it back for a second discussion. Councillor Duncan.
I guess I'm a little confused as well too, because Dasha explained to us that by accepting the reprimand, we're saying that we don't condone the breach of code of conduct, and I don't think anybody on council condones the breach of code of conduct. So I think that I'm a little confused myself as to why we wouldn't accept the reprimand.
Yeah.
What's that?
Through the word, you voted that down.
We have voted that down, so I can't bring that back up to the best of my knowledge. Councillor Wilhelm.
Can we bring up a different recommendation?
I most certainly may.
All right. We seem to be stuck here. I think that we have to show the public that we do not agree with this, that there was a code of conduct breach. So I would make a recommendation that we do have a reprimand and a loss of 1 day's pay.
Well, that is different than the first motion, so I believe I can accept that. Correct?
Yep, it's different.
Am I correct on that? Okay, so I have somebody willing to make a motion, a reprimand and 1 day penalty. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Duncan. Okay, discussion on that motion. Councillor Hurley.
Again, I still stay steadfast. A point of order would have been sufficient. We've all been caught up in the moment, called to or made the call, and I stay steadfast that this is frivolous.
Okay, well, I gotta actually stop you there because technically you're not supposed to be involved in this. So I have a motion on the floor. 1 day suspension of pay with reprimand. Those in favor of that motion? Don't be moving around because I gotta count numbers. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. That one does carry. Okay, so that is the recommendation. Reprimand with 1 day suspension.
I believe
Okay.
that concludes our presentation, Warden, and for the record, I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Herlick for his cooperation with the complaint process. He was certainly responsive as he has been in the past, and thank you for the professionalism of all involved.
Thank you, Dash, and I will apologize for that first vote. I have 4 people in council. The rest of them are on the screen, and when I was trying to count numbers, for some reason, they were flipping from side to side, and I was.
No, that was happening on my
I can see
screen.
you.
That was happening on my screen as well, Warden. I think sometimes it just happens automatically. That's thank you for acknowledging that. I will leave you to your business, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dasha. Okay, we're gonna move on. Next on the agenda is Barry Swift. And that is the Swift presentation. And let me just check my clock here because tonight we got lots of time. So Barry has a meeting at 10 and he has a hard cap end time. So this shouldn't take near that length of time, but we got lots of time to get Barry on now, which is nice. So we don't have to bring him back another meeting. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can even see you now. Thanks, Barry.
Perfect. Well, again, good morning. I've got a short presentation I'd like to give here, if I can share my screen. And let me know when you can see this.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right, perfect. I want to give a brief update on the SWIFT program, and then I want to talk to a little bit about some proposed changes to the Building Broadband Faster Act. So let me get into the SWIFT program update, which should be relatively quick here. I think as everybody's aware, there are 5 projects that were awarded in Perth County. We've got 2 to Mornington, 1 to Tucker Smith, 2 to Whiteman. 2 of these have been completed now. This Perth 01 Mornington, which is in Perth East here, and also the Perth 06 Whiteman, this small one up here just to the east of Listowel. Where we are with the other ones. So we've got, again, 3 projects on the go. 2 of them, 2 of the 5 have already been completed. They are 100% in service. This Perth 05 Tucker Smith, which is in the Willow Grove area, it is behind schedule. It was scheduled originally to be completed at the end of December. The ISP has pushed that out until the end of May of this year for what we call construction complete. This other milestone in service is really an administrative milestone. Once the construction is complete, the network is in service, it's taking customers, all of that good stuff. From a practical perspective, that is really what the public cares about. The milestone 3 is us getting all of our paperwork done, going out and inspecting it, all of that good stuff. That project, again, is scheduled to be complete construction at the end of May, and then the administrative milestone 3, the end of August. There are 114 premises or households in that project area. 95 have been implemented. Of those, 13 are serviceable. So we expect to see this number increase in April, and then finally at the end of May, this will be 100% of those in service. The other 2 projects are Mornington projects. Both of those are on track to complete at the end of this year, at the end of December. We see a little bit of risk in this Perth 08 Mornington project. As you can see, the construction start date has been pushed out, although they are holding to the construction completion date. We're working with them to see if we can bring the construction start in a little bit. 2 months to complete 67 kilometers of fiber is a a tight schedule, but not impossible. So we want to see if they can bring that back in a little bit to give us a bit of breathing room on that completion date. Other than that, again, all of the projects will be done by the end of this year. A little bit of an update on the ICON, UBF, and ACIT programs. So these are the other funding programs being run by the federal and the provincial government. The UBF and ICON projects, there really isn't a change from the last presentation I gave to council. We're waiting for some detailed announcements from the feds and the province on, you know, the exact location of those projects, what the deliverables are for the ISPs, and when they will be implemented. We've not seen that as yet. As far as the ACIT program goes, or the Accelerated High-Speed Internet Program being run by the Ministry of Infrastructure of Ontario, they have completed their reverse auction. They are, to the best of my knowledge, now working with the ISPs to close off on the contracts, and at some point we will get an announcement from the province on what the results of that program are. I don't have any view or knowledge of what that might be. So we're waiting for the province to announce the results of that program. Want to talk a little bit again about the Building Broadband Fast Track. The province has come out with some amendments that they intend to implement. Among those, there is a requirement that the municipalities will be required to issue permits within 10 days of application if the application is for less than 30 kilometers of fiber, and within 15 days if it's more than 30 kilometers of fiber. In some cases, municipalities are okay with this. They've got processes in place to deal with these timelines. In many others, what we're seeing in the SWIFT program is that these timelines are very, very aggressive and low. On top of that, municipalities will be required to utilize what's called the Broadband One window. So this is a platform being set up by the province to deal with all of the permits, the various drawings, all of that. It's kind of a central repository for all of that information. The municipalities will be required to upload locations of existing utilities into the Broadband One window. And also they're proposing administrative financial penalties for non-compliance with this process. So if you're beyond the 10 days, there's a potential that there could be a financial penalty to the municipality. It's not a guarantee. It's not, you know, once the clock runs out, you get a penalty. I believe their intent is to work with the municipalities to try to, you know, get things done as soon as possible. But the risk is that there is a financial penalty potential. So we do have some concerns about that. First being the 10 to 15 days not being long enough for most municipalities. In some cases, municipalities require a council resolution in order to issue a permit. In that case, of course, 10 days is not sufficient. You know, permits are not simply a rubber stamp. The planning departments in the various municipalities actually have to, you know, look at existing utilities, look at future plans, go out and do some analysis on this before they can come back with any sort of, you know, either approval or recommendations, things like that. On top of that, the ISPs, or the internet service providers, you know, they need to order materials. Once they're done all of their engineering, there's all sorts of other things that need to happen beyond just the permits themselves that take a whole lot longer than 10 days. So we think kind of restricting the municipalities to 10 days at the end of the day isn't going to buy you much, because all of this other activity now becomes the bottleneck, right? So I think if you kind of line the timelines of those up better, then you're in a better position to give the municipalities the time they actually need to do this. The second point is it assumes that the municipalities are the bottleneck here, right? Which in some cases is the case. We've seen some municipalities that take a very long time to issue permits. But it doesn't consider, you know, kind of late permit applications or inadequate applications coming out of the ISPs. Noting here, there's no requirement in the act that says, the ISPs have to apply within a certain time frame, right? I'm afraid that what this will do is it will give the ISPs a bit of a pass, if you will, so that they can apply for the permits even later, and it puts the onus on the municipality to turn them around quickly, right? What I'd like to see is a requirement for the ISPs to actually apply for the permits within a reasonable time frame, give the municipalities another reasonable time frame to respond to them and to issue the permits. Next point is that the act only applies to municipalities and LDCs. It doesn't apply to entities such as the Ministry of Transportation, conservation authorities, railways, etc. All of these other entities in, if they're relevant to the project, if they're in the area of the project, they require permits too. But the act only applies to municipalities and LDCs, which leaves a gap. If there's a provincial road that needs a permit, they're not required to act within 10 days, right? So it's not comprehensive, to say the least. There's no funding to municipalities for the additional workload in this case. There will be additional workload. I'll make another point about that momentarily, but there's no proposed funding available to the municipalities to make this happen. The municipalities, I talked a little bit about ICON, UBF, and ASIP. Right now, you have no idea the magnitude of work that's coming at you because you don't know what the results of these programs are. So you're being asked to comment on something that you don't really understand fully, right? So you don't know if there's going to be a kilometer of fiber in Perth County or 1,000 kilometers of fiber, right? Those are two very, very different problems, of course, but without those announcements coming out, it's very difficult for any municipality to kind of gauge what the level of effort is going to be. A couple other minor issues here. So there is some area in the legislation that talks about locators. So, the locators that go out and find where the existing utilities are. Effectively it sees that dedicated locators are being used rather than just making an appointment to have the locator come out and do the locates. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. The problem with locates right now, and it is a problem there, it's very difficult to get locates done in a timely manner. So I appreciate that the province is trying to address that. But the problem with locates is that there just aren't enough locators, right? It's not that they're being used inefficiently. It's that there's not enough of them, right? So I think dealing with the problem effectively would address the issue of trying to get more of them trained and up to speed, all of that good stuff. And then finally, municipalities are required to submit electronic files of their existing utilities through the Broadband One window. That's going to take some training on the part of somebody in your municipalities. And I'm not just talking about the upper tier, by the way, this applies to lower tiers as well. So all levels will need to adhere to this act. So there's training involved. There's the effort of getting all of your existing documentation into the Broadband One window. And the problem is, what if you don't have electronic copies of this? Now, in today's day and age, most municipalities do have that, but there are many who still, there's a closet somewhere with paper copies of these drawings on them, right? And that's the extent of it. So that doesn't really address that issue. So the province has asked for feedback, which is coincidentally due today. We have provided a template to the municipalities for them to use as, verbatim or to amend as you see fit. That kind of lays out the issues we have with it. The feedback that's due today is on the act itself and not on the administrative financial penalties. They've given us till the 22nd of April to comment on the administrative financial penalties. So again, we'll be sending out a kind of a template of the issues that Swift sees with the penalties, but that'll come next week sometime. And true to my word, I made it as quick as possible. Open to any questions if there are any.
Well, thank you, Barry. Questions for Barry on his presentation? Councillor Kazenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and Barry, always wonderful to have you at our council table with the presentation. I'll offer a general observation with regards to some of the provisions of the Building Broadband Faster Act. Of course, we want broadband built faster, but there certainly are some provocations that are loaded in there for both upper tier and lower tier municipalities, and they are concerning to me, certainly with regards to workload, amongst other things. My question for you relates to a parallel process, which I'm curious about whether the province has permitted allowance for in this act, and that is we have, at least in Perth County, in our planning process for land development, often we execute a pre-submission consultation, and then we have the opportunity to review the applications that come in, and in some cases they're incomplete, and we can deem them incomplete and work with the proponents to achieve appropriate completion of these applications. I could foresee that the applications for various permits could also be incomplete. And I'm wondering if the legislation has considered that the fact that municipalities may need to say to the proponents, that's incomplete, we're not accepting it at this point as an officially submitted document. So any thoughts on that one? Any observations there?
Yeah, thank you for the question. There is a consideration in the act to stop the clock if the municipality deems that there is some missing information or insufficient information provided. They can go into the broadband one window and kind of push a button and stop the clock there. So the 10 days is really 10 days of municipal activity, not overall activity, if that makes any sense.
Other question. I think I saw another hand go up. Councillor Hurley, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. It's interesting. I struggle with the whole SWIFT program at times. It's funny how fiber was going to be the way more so, and now it's leaning through air, and it's a lot of time, that's for sure. It's interesting. Fiber has its pluses, that's for sure, and it's just this continuous shift, and we really don't know. It's a little frustrating, but time will tell, right?
Other questions, comments?
Can I make a comment to that? Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So I would say so. So of course the SWIFT project, all of the 5 projects we awarded in Perth County are fiber based, of course. I don't know, nobody knows the results of the other programs. I do believe they are heavily weighted towards fiber. I won't say they are going to be all fiber, but I do believe that preference was given, and with the amount of money they had, they were trying to get as much fiber in the ground as possible. So I think I'm hopeful that what we'll see in those results is a majority of fiber in southwestern Ontario. There will be areas of wireless, I know that, but I'm not convinced that it's going to be a substantial area. So we're hopeful that it is mostly fiber based.
Other questions or comments? I guess one comment for me, Barry, that 10 to 15 day window, I know you presented that at WWC, and that kind of made some eyebrows go up and down. But the big problem, when I look at that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for most municipalities to issue permits of any sort, building whatever, they need the blessing of conservation authorities or a railway or the MTO. And they're not really subject to that 10 to 15 days. So I don't see that working, period.
Yes. So where there is a requirement, by the way, the act doesn't say you need to change your process, right? Your process for permits is what it is. So where a given municipality has a requirement that maybe MTO sign off on it or a conservation authority sign off on it first, there is not a need to change that process. But again, those entities are not required to respond within any time frame. So by default, you're almost guaranteed to miss your 10 days, right? I don't know that you're allowed to stop the clock. I don't know that you're not allowed to, but I don't know that you're allowed to stop the clock if you're dependent on somebody else giving you a kind of sign off before you issue your permit. It'll be interesting to see how that actually works.
Well, hopefully lots of municipalities make comment to that in the submissions by the end of today.
Yeah.
Because I'll guarantee you right now, you're not going to make that 10 to 15 day window.
Yeah.
If you have to get blessings from those, because we've dealt with MTO, we've dealt with the railways before, we've dealt with conservation voice. It isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
End of discussion.
And I think it's fair to comment that nobody wants this more than the municipalities, right? So what we found during the SWIFT program is the municipalities, they work with the ISPs to get the permits issued as soon as possible. In some cases, there are issues with manpower and capacity. And again, SWIFT is the tip of the iceberg here, right? If you look at the dollar amounts of the SWIFT program compared to the dollar amounts of all of these other programs, it just gets dwarfed. So there is orders of magnitude greater than the SWIFT program is, the work that's coming down the pipe. But the municipalities work with the ISPs to get this done as soon as possible because it's in their best interest. They know that, right? So I don't think there is any sort of intentional delays in any municipality to any of this. They have an obligation, you have an obligation to make sure the permits that are being issued are proper and all of your concerns are addressed and all of that good stuff. So I think the 10 to 15 days is too quick. We've recommended something more like 30 to 40 days, and we're talking business days, of course, here, but I think that's a little more appropriate.
Thanks, Barry. Councillor Kausenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Again, actually, I know that we're still in the delegation phase of the meeting here, but given that today is the deadline for the province, do we have any means with which we can make our contribution to express our concerns about some of these matters in the bill?
Yeah, so I've provided a template to the to the municipality. Again, you can use it verbatim, or you can use it as kind of a starting point, or you can ignore it altogether and write your own letter if you want. But it is due at the end of day today. I think staff has an intention to, if I don't want to speak for staff, but I think there is an intention to send it by the end of day today. And again, if you need anything from us on that, please let me know.
We have addressed this. Yep. County council or county staff have addressed this issue. Lower tiers should as well, though.
Yeah.
Lori?
So through the warden, Mr. Field and the lower tier CAOs, as well as myself, met last week to review all of this. And the draft letter has been provided to everyone.
Just kind of important, actually. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Barry. Good update.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives a presentation SWIFT monthly update and proposed legislative amendments. Moved by Councillor Kausenberg, second by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? And that is carried. I'm not worried about faces bouncing on that one. Okay, moving on. Adam Kozlowski, we'll get him on the screen here. He's doing it right. And that is to do with the modification of plan of subdivision.
Can everybody hear me okay? My camera doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, I can hear you, Adam. I can't see you, but I can definitely hear you.
Okay, yeah, this is, it's unusual. Everything seems to be. Okay, well, I'll do my presentation. I'll share a screen as well and walk council through this, application. And I trust everybody can see the map.
We can see that on the screen, Adam.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna kind of zoom out a little bit here and show council Milverton. And the application before council today is a request by the owner of a subdivision that's been approved since 1993 on the west side of Milverton. And they've applied to, they've asked for an extension on their lapse date approval for the plan of subdivision. And that lapse date is coming up in June of this year. And we have a new builder on, excuse me, we have a new builder on board who's motivated. And with the draft plan conditions that we've updated, we have requested and recommended a 3-year extension so that the developer can prepare and have approved some of the studies and technical requirements for the plan of sub. So I just want to show council very briefly for context that the subject land is on the west side of Milverton. And it's previously been zoned for this development. As you can see, all the residential and commercial zones are in place. And the official plan designation reflects the residential and commercial uses as well. So there's no additional changes that we need to do here for designations or zoning. I'll go into kind of the draft plan a little bit here. So again, this was approved in 1993 with a set of conditions that at the time, compared to today's conditions, are pretty slim. They're very general in nature. And what we did is throughout the winter and spring, we worked collaboratively with BM Ross to basically overhaul the draft plan conditions to bring them up to modern standards. And just for council's information, this is the draft plan. It has not changed since 93. And what we're looking at here, the green blocks are single detached homes. So there's a total of 51 dwelling units in the subdivision. So green is singles. The yellow block here on either side of the road are semi-detached. So there will be 2 units per lot here. Inside the court, you've got, these will be probably 3-story apartments or triplexes, higher density. And then everything in red here will be highway commercial. So for the time in 1993, it was actually a fairly forward-looking plan of subdivision because it provides a range of housing densities as well as different uses. So we'll have a combination here of different residential densities as well as employment uses. And I'll just zoom out here. Here's a little bit of the breakdown of the lots and blocks and the number of units. And the conditions from 93, again, were very general. Didn't have a lot of detail as to what the developer has to do as well as studies. And the conditions that have been overhauled by staff are here, and it's in the report package, but we've basically modernized it so that for example, the subdivision agreement, we've given more detail on what the conditions are for that agreement. And we've also added in a few additional studies that would be required today, but weren't required back in 93. So the 3-year extension of the lapse date will give the developer time to finish these studies off and work towards registration of the subdivision. I'll stop sharing the screen. So this revised set of conditions did go before Perth East Council on March 22nd, and it was endorsed by Perth East Council. And we're here today in front of County Council, as County is the subdivision approval authority. I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Any questions for Adam on his report on this? Or any comments? Councillor Kasenberg?
Just a quick query, Adam, if you might. The average or usual residential density in this proposed effort is what? What are we talking about here?
Through you, Warden. So I'll look at the screen here again. So the densities are like, if you looked at the surrounding community, it's typically single detached dwellings. And in this case, this plan of subdivision will be approximately half of those, or a little bit more than half of those residential units are going to be higher density. So we're looking at semis and apartment blocks. And then the other half approximately would be single detached. It is a fairly small site in terms of subdivisions. So I think that they've done a good job maximizing the use and utility of the land. to provide a range of different housing densities.
Sorry, supplemental, if I might. Usually we see expressions of, units per hectare or that kind of thing. Do you have that?
No, sorry, I don't have that number. But what I can do, if you just bear with me, I can do a very quick calculation here. So the area for residential, I'm just going to do this on the fly here. So the area of residential is about, let's call it 5 hectares. And we've got 51 dwellings total. So it's thereabouts a little bit over 10 units a hectare.
Any more comments on that? My own personal opinion, I wouldn't call that high density yet by any stretch of the imagination, but I guess that'll get dealt with in the official plan update. Hopefully. Okay, any other comments or questions for Adam? Not seeing any hands. I have a motion here. Perth County Council receives the application for modification of draft plan of subdivision 31T-92001 lapse date extension and updated conditions, and that Perth County Council approve the requested modification of a draft plan of subdivision by granting a 3-year extension of the draft plan of approval from June 15th of 2022 to June 15th of 2025, and to include other additional and updated conditions as recommended by the Planning Department and endorsed by the Council of the Township of Perth East. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Last chance for questions or comments. Councillor Hurley.
Yeah, no, just a quick question on the density. Of course, we'll see when it comes further, but I just want to bring to council's attention, there has been other subdivisions and existing ones come for review. And, we don't necessarily focus in and adjust for updated density. Of course, there's areas for it where we need to ensure we have what you would say affordable living, but yeah, it's interesting. Thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions? Those in favor of that motion on the floor? That is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, members of council, and have a good day.
Likewise. Okay, gonna move on. And next we have our forestry inspectors report. And are you doing that or Sean?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So through the warden, in front of council is the February 2022 forestry inspectors report prepared by Marvin Smith, the forestry inspector for the county. Marvin completed 13 inspections, all in response of submission of an NOI. If there's any questions, be happy to forward those on to Marvin.
Okay, questions or comments with regards to this report? Not seeing any hands up on the screen, none here. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives a February 2022 Forestry Inspectors Report for information. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That's carried. And we're going to move on again. Corporate oh, no, that was corporate services. So next on corporate services, the Perth County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee appointment. Are you taking that, Lori? Sean's doing that? Tyler's, geez, yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Bouncing around here.
So through the warden, before council is the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee appointment report. The Perth County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee is comprised of 9 members. Currently, there are 2 vacancies on the committee. One is a vacancy from the volunteer citizen, and another one is the organizational one, which is highlighted in my report, and we will handle that a little bit later on, perhaps. A recruitment process was conducted and subsequent recommendation for these council was received. The recruitment process resulted in one application for Perthes and was recommended by Perthes Council on March 22nd of this year for appointment by County Council. The application received was for Shannon Palmer, a past member of the committee from 2014 to 2015. Should council approve the appointment for Shannon Palmer to the JAC, she will carry the remaining term, and attached with my report is the amendment bylaw for the appointment. The term commences with council's term as well. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Questions for Tyler? Don't see any. Motion, Perth County receives the Perth County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee appointment report, and that council appoints Shannon Palmer to the Perth County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Kassenberg, second by Councillor Kellum. Those in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving on. Yeah, with accessibility, it's either you or Sean.
This one will be Sean.
This one is Sean?
Through the warden, I will take this one, thank you. So to you and through you to council, good morning, and I'd like to thank everybody for the opportunity to go over the report today. I do have a slideshow that will indulge me here. Just sort of go over. Okay, good. Screen view. Just sort of go over high level overview of the accessibility plan update for 2021, as well as some of the activities we've been carrying out in the past year and looking forward to 2022. And just before I jump into the presentation, I do want to take the opportunity to thank the staff from all four lower tiers for their efforts in supporting this report. These updates are a collaboration between all 5 municipalities. And while the county is responsible for compiling the information, packaging it into the report and the update, there wouldn't be much of a report without the assistance of our colleagues at the lower tiers. So I just wanted to take the time now to acknowledge and thank them for their efforts on this front. So the Legislative Services Division of the county has a role providing accessibility support services to the county in the 4 lower tiers. So this includes supporting and developing policies and procedures, helping ensure our services and facilities are accessible, supporting the AODA compliance and training, and acting as a resource for any concerns, as well as providing support for the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. So one of our annual tasks is compiling the update for the Joint Accessibility Plan. The current plan is in effect from 2018 to 2022, which is this year. The plan essentially is formalization of Perth County and its lower tier municipalities and the commitment to ensuring accessibility by removing barriers and meeting our obligations under the AODA. And to ensure the plan's effectiveness by considering lived experience, it's also developed in consultation with persons with disabilities and the JAAC. So the report before council today is essentially just an update of the activities that have taken place last year, documenting our commitment to our municipal obligations in regards to accessibility. So the details of 2021's accessibility related activities are included in the report, and they're categorized by each of the integrated accessibility standards as per the regulation under the AODA. All of the compliance deadlines stated in the regulation have passed, so our accomplishments listed for the county and the lower tier municipalities are by and large just reflective of maintaining all the good work that we've done up to this point. And county accomplishments for 2021 are detailed in the update report, but one highlight from last year included providing a number of training webinars in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Society and accessibility consultant Julie Sawchuk, and this was made possible by a grant through the New Horizons Fund. So I just wanted to point that out. In terms of goals for this year, the county has accessibility figuring into a number of major projects. Of note, the county is currently preparing for the installation of an elevator in the courthouse and renovations to 5 Huron Street, the building where Service Ontario currently resides. And these renovations are to create a new administrative space for county staff. And since 2022 will be the last year for the current joint accessibility plan, another major accessibility initiative will be coordinating development of a new multi-year accessibility plan in collaboration with all the lower tiers and the JAAC. And just as for information supplied from the lower tier municipalities, just to highlight a few things in terms of general themes of what people have been working on across the county. There's a lot of focus on training, some aspects of improving infrastructure or facilities, and establishing more online services or adding accessible documents and content to municipal websites. And all of the specific examples are available in the report. So we also want to take the opportunity to highlight some of our accessibility services activities planned for this year. In the fourth quarter of 2020, we implemented quarterly training sessions, and these are supplemental to the mandatory sessions as per the AODA, and they focus on different aspects of accessibility standards. We have received a lot of positive feedback from attendees, and we're continuing the program into 2022. And the most recent session was held on March 31st, and this was regarding accessibility terminology to support our efforts under the customer service standard. And we're going to continue supporting JAAC initiatives, which will include the installation of an accessible bench at the Archives walking trail. And as always, we're going to continue to support the JAAC to facilitate site plan reviews and provide clerking services for meetings. And of course, we're always looking forward to working with county and lower tier staff on an ad hoc basis as an information resource whenever we're needed. And that's everything I wanted to cover in the report. Just one note before I finish up here. The version of the update that's included in the agenda package is a draft. And after this meeting, if we receive any feedback, we'll integrate that into the report, and then we'll circulate that to all the lower tiers so that they can include the report on their websites, and we'll post on ours as well. And I will stop sharing. Any questions?
Thanks, Sean. Okay, questions for Sean on the accessibility report? Not seeing any hands there, not seeing any hands here. Okay, I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the Joint Accessibility Plan Annual Status Update 2021 report, and Perth County Council approves the Joint Accessibility Plan Annual Status Update 2021, and that staff be directed to post the Joint Accessibility Plan Annual Status Update 2021 on the Perth County website. Moved by Councillor Kasenberg, second by Councillor McKenzie. Last chance for questions. Those in favor? Carried. Perfect. Okay. We're going to move on. Public Works. And I know Bill's name's on the report. Bill's doing it? We're going to break down. Okay. Last month, Bill was on the report from Johnny. Keep tricking me. Oh, there's Bill. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Aitchison. Good morning, Council.
We're ready for your report.
Okay, thank you very much. This report is with regards to our roadside management program and impacts to the pollinators. Council may recall back in January of this year, they received correspondence through the consent agenda regarding roadside grass cutting programs within Huron and Perth counties. It came through the Asabo Bee Club. And at that same meeting, it was resolved that Perth County Council requested staff to prepare a report on road operations and the impacts that it has to the bee population. This report serves to outline our operations and the impacts that it has to the pollinators throughout the road allowance. The county has about 440 centerline kilometers of road that we maintain. Predominantly, those are of a rural road cross section. The roadside management activities undertaken in order to provide for road user safety. And we do that through methods, mostly cutting roadside, as well as our weed spraying activities that are done on an annual basis as well. Those are done to maintain clear sightlines for signs, intersections, private entrances, ditches, as well as for better sightlines to observe other hazards and wildlife along the roadside. In addition to this, these activities support other roadway functions, such as promoting positive drainage of surface water from the road and the shoulder areas, as well as reducing drifting occurrences during winter conditions, and also aim to prevent the spread of noxious or invasive weed species. Like I said, in order to achieve this, we use grass cutting, the roadside spraying program, and then also our road restoration program as well. These methods are similar to what are done throughout the province, and certainly as well as our local municipalities here. So with respect to the program and the impacts that it has on the pollinator habitats, there is a technical guide that was produced through the Ontario Land Managers Group. It is specific to roadside management and mowing and how that impacts or can enhance the pollinator habitat. The technical guide, it recognizes the importance of maintaining roadsides to provide accessibility and visibility for road user safety. So the primary objective of the department's roadside program is to provide safe passage of vehicles and users of our road system. With respect to our cutting program, we do that twice annually. It is provided, that service is provided to the county from our local municipal partners. The cut is done in the spring and then another cut in the fall. Within my report there was to be some bulleted points. They somehow didn't export the agenda, so I'll just go through a few of those to highlight them. Our mowing activities are restricted, or they're generally cut between about 1.5 meters to 2 meters on the immediate edge of the roadside. And then the remainder of the road allowance is generally left as natural growth. And that in itself provides habitat for pollinators. The mowing program is a biannual program, with the second cut occurring later on in the fall, which is when most of the vegetation has finished blooming. The mowing program is also carried out at slower speeds during daylight hours, when pollinators and other wildlife are active and they have a better ability to move away from the cut path. These bulleted points are best practices that are listed within that technical guide that I had previously referenced. And with respect to the weed spraying component of this, the county undertakes a weed audit prior to conducting our spray program. So that provides us the ability to do more targeted spraying of certain species of plants, rather than just going through a blanket spray program. The roadside spraying activities are only carried out when conditions are appropriate to do so. So under heavy winds or other conditions, we won't spray, as well as areas without weed growth. Those areas, they don't receive spray either. And to complement the program, we do allow property owners adjacent to county roads to request that their land is not included with the weed spraying program, so that we won't spray through those areas if requested. There is some provisions to that and some onus on those landowners that they are to control their weeds through different methods, whether it's cutting or pulling them, however they want to go about that. And we also do targeted spraying of Phragmites to control that invasive plant, which promotes hopefully the return of native species growth. And when we are going through construction projects or culvert replacements or any work within the roadside, we tend to reseed those disturbed areas with an MTO seed mix that is comprised of native species to regrow in those areas. And other than that, that summarizes the report here. And if there's any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Thanks, Bill. Questions for Bill on his report? Not see any hands there, not see any hands here. I have a motion. Perth County Council receives the roadside management impacts to pollinators report for information. Moved by Councillor Duncan, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Those in favor? That is carried. Perfect. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Council reports. Does anyone here have anything under council reports? Not seeing any hands. Bylaws. I have a bylaw. And this bylaw is for the Joint Accessibility Committee appointment. And it's bylaw number 3868-2022 be ready first, second, and third time. And finally passed the 7th day of April, 2022. Moved by Deputy Warden Hagan, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? That's carried. Okay. Notice of motions. Other business. Councillor Hurlick, hand one up.
Oh, just a quick maybe confirmation here. I see we've left the emergency here in Perth County, the declared emergency around COVID-19. Where is our vax policy now? You know, does that still stand? We have no emergency and we could be potentially asking for information that we shouldn't be when there's no emergency. I'm just curious.
Do you want to answer that or do you want me to do it? Or what now?
Sure, it can.
To the best of my knowledge, the vaccination is still in place, the policy, because it has not been rescinded.
Right.
We've left the state of emergency, but there was bylaw passed to put the vaccination policy in place, so it will still be in effect.
Yeah, no, I realize it's still in effect. My concern is we're asking for information when there's no emergency to support that. So I'm just really quite concerned. Are we in dicey waters?
I don't believe we are.
Through the warden, I don't believe we are. It is a council policy. So until it is rescinded, it remains in effect.
And I'm sure that's something that'll be dealt with down the road.
Okay.
I see another hand go up there for Councillor McDermott.
Yeah, I would ask for council to support this morning. I would like a report on how much each one of these code of conducts has cost us and an approximate amount of time that staff has spent on these codes of conduct, all three of them.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a.
Staff can do that.
Yep. No, and I would just simply ask for support to, in the code of conduct, it does not allow you to know who's accusing you. And I'd just like to know where that came from. Like what, if that's a law or where that, how that works out. I just find that extremely un-Canadian because in Canada, you do have the right to face your accuser. So I'd just like to know where that came from.
I'm gonna let Lori take that one on.
Thank you. We will address that in the report. When we come back, we'll make sure we put that in writing for council, because it'll be something that will come up through orientation next year as well. So we're happy to address that. And the practice is that we would not release the names of the people who are submitting complaints. And there is a basis for that. But we'll make sure we put all that in writing for an explanation for council, and then we can have legal counsel here as well through Annette to do that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Other questions or other items for other business? Not seeing any hands. Announcements. Not seeing any hands. So at this point in time, I need a motion. We will move into closed session at 10:22. And that will be a matter pertaining to security of property of the municipal emergency services, a matter pertaining to security of the property of the municipalities, facilities, excuse me, a matter pertaining to solicitor advice, potential litigation, and a matter pertaining to what we added on at the beginning was legal
Solicitor advice.
Update on potential litigation. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Duncan, Councillor McKenzie. Those in favor? That's carried. So we're going to okay. So now we're out of closed session and we have a couple little things to clean up, and we have confirmatory bylaw number 38692022. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the county of Perth at its regular meeting held April 7th, 2022 is read effect first, second, and third time and finally passed April 7th, 2022. Moved by Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Wilhelm seconds. Those in favor? That is carried. And then I have a motion that the county council meeting be adjourned at 11:18. Moved by Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much.